In my glass on this table is my most anticipated whiskey of the past year. And I knew getting a bottle of it was going to be tough, if not nearly impossible. And in fact, I struck out in that regard. But I was lucky enough to be able to sign up for a virtual whiskey tasting through Kensington Wine Market in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where they actually included it in the lineup. So tonight we're going to talk about the Springbank Palo Cortado 10-year-old single malt, and we're going to talk about how it compares to the first release in the Sherrywood series, the Springbank Pedro Jimenez 10-year-old, as well as if it lives up to the high expectations I placed on it. My name is Matt, this is Whiskey on the West Coast. The Springbank Palo Cortado 10-year-old is the second release in Springbank's Sherrywood series, following up on last year's Springbank PX 10-year-old. Now, if you'd like to hear my thoughts on the Springbank PX 10, you can find a link in the description where I actually cover that whiskey in an earlier video. Now, there will be 3 more releases in this series that I'm aware of. In 2024, we should see the release of the Springbank Amontillado 10, followed by the Springbank Fino 10 in 2025, and finished off, as far as I know, by the Springbank Manzanilla 10-year-old in 2026. Palo Cortado Sherry is made much like Fino or Amontillado Sherry, but it is rare because it requires the spontaneous absence of the protective floor yeast that covers the top. And in this way, Palo Cortado is kind of like an oxidatively aged Amontillado Sherry. Oftentimes it's considered a good middle ground between Oloroso and Amontillado. We're going to move into the review now, but I love your comments and I do my best to respond to all of them. So please join in the conversation down below. Comment, what are your thoughts on the Springbank Palo Cortado 10-year-old if you've tried it? How does it compare to the Springbank Pedro Jimenez 10-year-old? Did it live up to your expectations? And also, do you have a favorite Palo Cortado finished or matured whiskey if you have any experience with them? I know these Springbanks have been tough to get, so let me know in the comments down below what's your favorite Palo Cortado influenced whiskey. Also, thank you so much for supporting me and encouraging me with this Whiskey on the West Coast journey. If you want to support me in a different way, consider joining my Patreon, where I post additional reviews and videos. I'll be posting a kind of review video kind of covering the entire tasting, but really focusing on a whiskey that absolutely stole the show in this tasting, as well as the Kilkerran Heavily Peated Batch 9. Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters that I already have. You've been such a big support to me, and I just want to keep sharing my thoughts on whiskey and having fun in this journey. So thank you. Let's get to the review. The vital stats on the Springbank Palo Cortado 10-year-old are that it was distilled in July of 2013. It was bottled in the fall of 2023. It's bottled at 55% ABV. It's non-chill filtered. It's natural color, bottled on site. All the lovely Springbank things we love. It spent 6 years in ex-bourbon barrels before being moved to fresh Palo Cortado Sherry hogsheads for 4 more years. And there was about 10,200 bottles of this produced. All right. Get into the whiskey. On the nose, a lot of cinnamon spice and like almost a ginger beer note on the very beginning of the nose, and something more akin to like vanilla Coke, like cherry vanilla Coke. It's also got a certain chalkiness to it too that I've had in other Springbanks, as well as like Ardnamurk and kind of like the Rockets candy, that sort of smell. Also getting a certain nuttiness to this, kind of reminding me more of like walnuts than anything else. With that cinnamon spice, with the kind of ginger beery note, it really is actually reminding me a little bit of the nose on the Glenmorangie 12-year-old Palo Cortado. So that's interesting to have a current pulled through there, where it seems the Palo Cortado is bringing similar characters. It's not particularly funky on the nose, but let's get to the palate. Again, cinnamon hearts, Coca-Cola, and like a farmy, funky note, the Campbelltown funk is absolutely here in spades. It's present. This is Springbank for sure. And honestly, it's almost like an effervescent sort of feeling on the whiskey. It's almost bubbly at times, which is a really cool feeling. It's like bright and sparkly in my mouth, which might sound like lunacy to someone who doesn't drink whiskey, but I feel like you all are probably right here with me. All right, another sip. Apricot, fruit leather, really nice amount of dried fruit. It's not like overbearing. It's not taking over the entire palate. It's working in nice harmony with a bit of light peat, that Campbelltown funk, that Springbank funk that we all love. Yeah, apricot, fruit leather, or like dried apricots. Generally just dried fruit, maybe dried mango, and definitely raisin in there too. I feel like that goes without saying when we're talking about sherry, but in this case I should probably mention it. Yeah, there's a bit of like grippiness on the back palate here. One more sip. Man, the interplay between that funkiness, really perfect amount of peat. The finish now is like, oh, is that exact interplay between those elements. A bit of nuttiness, a good amount of like grippiness from some oak tannin here as well. Some spice. The resolve is actually just, it really is a combination of all those elements that came across on the palate. For me, the palate is much more impactful for this whiskey than the nose was, and is kind of exactly what I was hoping for from a Palo Cortado influenced Springbank. So does the Springbank Palo Cortado 10-year-old live up to expectations? I'd say yes, which is really impressive because I put a lot of weight of expectations and anticipation on this whiskey, and it has delivered. And I believe it's delivered mainly because it has more recognizable Springbank character and DNA on the palate, not necessarily on the nose, but on the palate it certainly does, than the Springbank PX 10-year-old did. And for that reason, it's much more up my alley. Now, the difference between it and the PX 10-year-old, I've already alluded to it. Both are good whiskeys, really, they really are. But even though the Pedro Jimenez 10-year-old had 1 year less of sherry cask influence on it, with 3 years in Pedro Jimenez casks, whereas the Palo Cortado had 4 years of sherry influence, it had a much larger presence. Maybe that's down to just the nature of Pedro Jimenez. It's very, like almost like sticky, sweet, over the top style sherry influence. It covered up the Springbank DNA. It obscured it much more, and to the point where I really preferred the presentation of the Palo Cortado. The balance between the Springbank character and DNA and the cask type, the cask interplay, is much more cohesive in this whiskey, and much more to my liking as a result. Now, in regards to whiskey FOMO, the fear of missing out on releases, and whether or not this is worth the price of admission, I doubt I'm going to be able to get a bottle. I'm not too bothered by that. Would I have paid the MSRP in the UK of about 99 British pounds, 100 pounds? Absolutely. Yeah, I'd do that in a heartbeat. However, when it comes to the secondary, I wouldn't pay too much over that to go ahead and grab a bottle. Now, if I say had my heart set on this type of sherry cask influence, or if I wanted to collect the whole Sherry Wood series from Springbank, yeah, I'd probably pay quite a bit more. But where I've seen this going on the secondary market in Canada is right around $500 Canadian. And for me, that's far too much. That is not nearly what I would pay for this whiskey. As for a score, and got to be careful with scores here because this is almost like a first impression of this whiskey. I don't have a whole bottle to get acquainted with, so take this with a grain of salt. But if I had to really knuckle down and give this a score today, I would give this an 88.5 out of 100. A very solid score. It's a very enjoyable whiskey and something I'd love to have a bottle of. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting down below. Keep doing that. I love interacting with you all. I hope you come back for more in the future. Until next time, from the West Coast, slunge.